We're back after the break, baking bread. Hi again. Today on Great Expectations, we're getting wonderfully hands-on with our how-to show. Now in our kitchen to show us how to make easy bread, we have Chef Yudhika Sujanani. Welcome, Yudhika. And most recipes for bread seem so complicated, but you do this every Sunday with your family. So show us some easy bread. Show us what you do.
Okay, well, the good thing about this bread is that it's actually going to be without yeast. So it cuts down on your preparation time. The first thing we're going to do is pop some onion into a very little sunflower.
A very, very nice hot pot.
A nice hot pot.
A ticking pot.
A ticking pot, yeah. It does make a little ticking sound.
Can I do that for you? All right.
Right.
You give me the hard work always, Yudhika.
Always.
And the dangerous work. All right.
I'm so used to being splashed, but anyway. So the ingredients for this are very simple. You're going to use brown flour, white flour, salt, a teaspoon of sugar, 2 teaspoons of bicarb, and 300 ml of buttermilk. And then you've got 30 grams of butter. So I'm going to pop those ingredients into a mixing bowl.
Okay, so if you missed any of those ingredients, you'll find all of those ingredients on our Facebook page. Yudhika's shared her recipe with us. Thank you.
1 teaspoon of sugar going in.
Okay, just remind us what you're putting in there.
1 teaspoon of sugar.
Right.
And this is your 2 teaspoons of bicarb.
Right.
Right. And then you've got salt. I'm using sea salt.
Okay, so the coarse salt.
About 1 teaspoon. I normally add a bit more salt, but I'm going to be flavouring this bread with feta and rosemary. Now, feta is quite salty, so you don't have to add too much salt. In goes the butter, some soft butter. Now, the important thing to remember...
How much butter is that?
That's 30 grams of butter. When you are making this bread, just remember that it's like making a scone, really, a savoury scone. And it's great eaten fresh or even toasted.
So really hands-on, because I see you're doing this with the hands.
Yes, with the hands. Right. I say clean hands are a chef's or a cook's best tool. So you're just going to lift that up and rub that in quite gently. Also with this bread, you don't want to actually be kneading it because it becomes quite heavy. Do you want to pop that?
So we're looking at crumbs. We're looking at almost like crumbs that we're forming there.
It's also not very oily bread or rich bread. It's just very, very basic.
Now, do you need me to put the onions in there for you? Do they need to be brown or just soft?
No, just soft. And the reason we do this is that we reduce the acidity in the onions.
Okay.
When you actually, fry them.
And you had olive oil in here. What kind of oil?
Always sunflower oil, or use cook's olive oil. Now, olive oil actually tends to burn, so you don't want to add olive oil and cook at a high temperature because you can actually ruin the oil and start to denature the oil.
So we've got the onions, that's rosemary, and before that was the?
Feta cheese, the feta cheese going in. I'm just breaking this apart.
Now you do this every Sunday with your family? You bake your own bread on a Sunday?
Yes, the kids love baking bread. And it's also, it's either bread or mud cakes. So I'd rather have bread.
I'd much rather have the bread, yes.
Yeah, the bread is fantastic. And also, I think if you say to a child, eat anything that's not store-bought bread, they say, oh, Mom, I really don't want to eat that. But if you have your children involved with making bread, then they're actually quite keen on trying bread with onions and all of that.
And your kids love it? I mean, they love to help with the... Do you let them put their hands in there?
Yes.
You do?
Clean hands. You got to watch the clean hands story because otherwise they pet the dog and then they sort of...
And this is the buttermilk?
That's the buttermilk.
So why buttermilk instead of yeast? Why do you prefer buttermilk?
The buttermilk actually reacts with the bicarb and it gives off gas, which makes the bread rise.
And is this a healthy bread for anybody who's thinking, oh, those carbs?
Yeah, it is healthy bread. I am using organic flour and it's stone ground flour as well. So you can actually just use normal cake flour. Also with this recipe, you don't need to use brown flour if you want a bit of a treat. You don't want to eat
a cheat
day. A cheat day, yeah. You're just going to move that around a bit.
Okay, so that's quite, it's now becoming very doughy from the crumbs that we had.
It's quite a sticky dough. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit messy for TV, but I quite like this recipe.
Okay, well, so you can stick both your hands in there, and I'm sure that's the part the kids love, is the sticky part.
Yes, yes, it's very gooey, and you know that they just need to, not knead it, but sort of work it into the center like that. You're just going to kind of grab the mixture from the sides and push it into...
There's no eggs or anything in here, so it's great for anybody who doesn't
eat eggs on a veg day. It's fantastic for meat-free Monday. But also, if you want a vegan option, you could just add 30 ml of olive oil or sunflower oil to this recipe.
And that would be instead of?
The butter.
The butter.
Yeah, the butter would be the and also you can also use like a soy milk or something in here for a vegan option. So just gently
Explain
kneading.
to us, yeah, your method here. You say gently knead it, just fold it in. Smush it.
Smush.
it. Okay,
It's a
tell the
chef
kids
word.
to smush it.
Smush it, yes. I always say smush it in. And
I'm
trying to do this.
I'm not a big fan of rosemary, but if I were to use another herb in here, could I substitute with any one?
Yes,
any
you
herb?
could. I love coriander and garlic in bread as well.
That sounds yum. That
And
sounds like something I
also fresh thyme. I'm also not very much of a rosemary person, but feta and rosemary seem to work very well together. So you're just going to work that together.
So fresh thyme, coriander, all the variants
parsley,
that you could
basil and tomato is just
Ooh,
match made in
yum,
heaven.
yum, yum. All right.
Those are like big friends. So, right, I'm going
What do we do
to
with
get
this
both my hands in here now.
mushed up mixture.
Right, you're going to just squash
Can
that
I hold
together.
that for you? Let me get that.
No.
Is it
No,
going to...
No, well, yeah, that would be good. You don't need to hold the spoon.
We don't need a runaway gingerbread man here.
No. We're not going to have a runaway gingerbread man. So there we go. Our dough's coming together quite nicely. You can just pop a little bit of flour into your fingers.
To get that off.
To get
and
that
just
off.
remind us, Yudhika, quickly of all those ingredients so mums
So
can
it
take
was
this down.
brown flour, 225 grams of brown flour, 225 grams of white flour, 300 mils of buttermilk, 30 grams of butter, and then you've got a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of sugar, 2 teaspoons of bicarb. You're really testing me, aren't
I'm
you?
testing you. All right. And then next, we get this onto the pan, and into the oven.
Now what you're going to do here is you're going to just take some flour and sprinkle it over the pan. You still got like pretty sticky dough, and you don't want to add too much flour into this dough because then your bread's going to be quite dry.
it's
So
a
this
nice
is like an
moist bread.
Irish actual recipe that I've taken and I've added some
And
herbs
you're not actually
and stuff.
using like a bread tin. This is a very rustic looking bread.
Yeah, it's a very like a country style bread.
Let's get that
Right.
into the oven.
Right, now you've got that going in there, and you're just going to sort of like
Just a
pat
big
it.
ball of dough.
Yeah, you press it down. I'm just going to rub this dough off my fingers so I can work a bit better. It's a bit messy, but lots of
that's
fun
the
in the
fun
kitchen.
part.
Yeah. So you can either have your kids like playing outside in the mud, or you can have them baking fabulous bread.
Something the whole family can actually eat.
Yes, and also they sort of like, if they become more adventurous when it comes to eating
And they'll
bread.
eat it, which
Yep.
is the other benefit.
So now this is called
and a bit more
blessing.
flour. That
A
was
bit-
for?
That was just for the top to make it sort of, it's just the
Okay,
recipe.
so when it comes out of the oven, it's pretty looking
Yeah,
bread.
and this is called blessing the bread.
Blessing the bread.
So you kind of deep cross into the bread, right?
And what
then
temperature did we have our oven at?
200
Preheated.
degrees, and this is what we called pricking the bread to let out the
So
fairies.
we've blessed the bread, we've pricked the bread.
And out come the fairies.
And out come the fairies.
You know,
Let's
Irish-
get it into the oven. Let's get it into
Right.
the oven.
There we go. Now I've baked one already.
Yes, and we can hear the hum of the microwave there.
Yeah. Okay, and here is the baked bread. I'm just going to use this fork to push it.
Because that's really hot right now.
It's very,
Oh,
very
and
hot.
I can smell the rosemary from here.
Yeah, it just
It's
smells
very nice and
amazing.
strong.
There's nothing like
Oh,
fresh.
let me have a whiff of that. There's
That is
nothing
amazing.
like freshly baked bread to throw you completely off a diet.
Right, and then this one can go into the oven.
Yes, because we're all going to have some of that. Now, how do I know that that bread is actually baked on the inside?
It should be brown underneath, and this is one I made earlier with cherry tomatoes.
Right.
It should be hollow as well when you
Okay.
tap it. Cherry tomatoes, some coriander, and black olives. Now, the traditional way to eat the bread is you
Break it.
actually break it.
How long did we bake that for?
40 minutes.
40 minutes.
40
right.
minutes, and that's what the bread looks like inside.
And that's very soft inside. Oh, that looks yummy. This is mine. I don't know where you can have the rest. This is mine. This whole chunk is mine.
But
All
you
right,
can
so very
flavor
soft.
it with anything you want, really.
Okay. Oh, yum. I'm going to taste this. I'm going to throw
Go
the
for
diet
it.
out the window.
I'm glad you like it.
And no preservatives in this.
No preservatives. You know, the problem
yummy.
with bread is that there's so much yeast and there's not enough fermentation time, so you get tummy cramps, bloating. and
How
all
long
of
can I
that.
keep this in my bread tin?
You can bake it for 30 minutes and freeze it, and then you just pop it into the oven for
another 10.
For another 10.
And if it's fully baked for
Fully
40?
baked, if it's a moist bread, it's important to keep the dough as moist as possible, so you don't want to add too much flour.
Okay.
And then it'll keep for about 3 days.
Well, it's not going to last anyway. I wouldn't need to save it. Delicious. Thank you, Yudhika. We're back after the break when we're finding out how to teach a child to love reading while I eat some more bread. Yes.